Okay. Dan, how are we looking?
You look great.
We're good to go? All right. I'll go ahead and get started. So thank you all so much for being here on this exciting day. Good morning, everyone. Before we begin, I would like to first acknowledge we are on the unceded territories of the Halkomelem, Semiahmoo, and Squamish-speaking people on whose lands we are so proud to operate, to work, and to serve every single day. A big thank you to the people joining me at this table today. We have the Minister of State for Infrastructure, Bowen Ma, here today. Thank you so much for being here. I am also joined today by TransLink's Vice President of Planning and Policy, Jeff Cross, alongside our Manager of Policy Development, Eve Howe. So thank you both for being here. Today, we are so excited to release the first look at Transport 2050, the blueprint that will help build a better future for Metro Vancouver. And I couldn't be more proud of this plan and the immense amount of work, the partnerships, and the engagement that went into getting us to where we are today. Over a 2-year engagement process, we've collected opinions and ideas from all over the region to listen and learn to what the region values, what the region prioritizes, and what the region wants done over the next 30 years. In the first 2 rounds of engagement, we had over 40,000 ideas or surveys submitted across 300 in-person or online events with input directly from the public on what they want for the next 3 decades. We heard from everyone, regardless of whether you primarily take transit, you walk, you bike, you roll, or you drive in your day-to-day life. We took all those ideas and all those priorities that we've heard over the last 2 years, and we've put them into a draft strategy. And today, we are releasing that strategy, and we're asking you if we got it right. The draft strategy we're releasing today will make an enormous impact on the region. So I'm proud that it recommends the kinds of big and very bold changes this region needs to be more equitable, more livable, and more sustainable. There are over 100 action items in this proposed regional transportation strategy, and you're going to hear more about that today from Jeff and from Eve in a moment. But there's 2 primary actions that I want to take a moment to highlight that will go such a long way to help shaping a more livable and a more sustainable Metro Vancouver. The first is that this plan recommends quadrupling our transit network, our rapid transit network, to create 300 kilometers of brand new rapid transit connections over the next 30 years, whether it's SkyTrain, subway, light rail, or bus rapid transit. Second, we're proposing to create an 850-kilometer traffic-separated major bikeway network to connect communities with greener transportation and to give people better and safer options to get around without a car. TransLink's going to be working hard with all levels of government and regional partners to get these done. And while there's a lot of studies, a lot of business cases, and work left to do, I'm confident that this plan will provide the guidelines to make Metro Vancouver the most livable region in the world. And I realize that some people may be wondering why we're making these kinds of recommendations while our ridership is still recovering from the pandemic. There has been certainly a mode shift where remote work and remote learning has become part of our day-to-day life. While ridership has been growing and has now reached 55% of pre-pandemic levels, we still have a long way to go. However, I remain optimistic. Based on the early recovery that we're already seeing, this region's unprecedented pre-pandemic growth trends and the recovery metrics that we're seeing from similar transit agencies around the world, I'm confident not only that our riders will return, but that it will grow to new heights. Our ridership will increase more than ever to levels this region has never seen. We need to plan for that future. We need to make sure that we have the transit infrastructure and that we have the transit services to greet future commuters with efficient and reliable zero-emission transportation options. And I believe this draft strategy that we've released today is going to get us there. This is a critical moment to shape our future, and I encourage everyone to please go to transport2050.ca, look through our proposed actions, and let us know, did we get it right? Thank you. And it is my privilege to introduce BC's Minister of State for Infrastructure, the Honourable Bowen Ma, to say a few words. Bowen.
I took my mask off maybe a couple of seconds early there. Thank you so much, Kevin, for the introduction, and thank you so much for starting us off in a good way with the territorial acknowledgements as well. I'm here today on behalf of the Honourable George Heyman, Minister responsible for TransLink, and it is a privilege to be here to speak on behalf of the Government of British Columbia. We are a proud partner in the development of Transport 2050, and we are eager to support regional strategies and actions that align with provincial priorities. And those include those of climate action, affordability, and improving the quality of life for people, as well as improving mobility for people, goods, and services. The heat waves, floods, and wildfires that have ravaged British Columbia this summer remind us clearly that the climate emergency is upon us. Everything we do from this point forward must bear this in mind and support a low-carbon future that our children and our grandchildren can live in and thrive in. Transportation, which of course includes the movement of people, goods, and services, and more, accounts for well over 1/3 of the emissions that British Columbia is responsible for tracking. And so the evolution of our transportation systems towards a low-carbon future is absolutely critical as a component of the work that we must do. And the good news is that we can do this while also enabling improved mobility for people, while providing more choices for how folks can move around, and while improving affordability for families. We're rethinking how we invest in transportation projects to deliver better outcomes for people today, as well as in the future. Because from start to finish and beyond, every transportation project that we invest in should deliver multiple benefits for British Columbians. That includes good jobs and robust economic stimulus at a local level, improved mobility and safe transportation options, healthier, more livable communities, and more. And despite the impacts that the pandemic has had on ridership, we know that public transit will continue to be a critical part of the pathway forward for our growing communities. When our government declared public transit an essential service at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, we meant it. We've invested hundreds of millions of dollars to keep it running, even when ridership dropped, because we understand its importance to those who needed it the most and its importance to our economic recovery. And with the pandemic also came an increased interest in cycling, walking, rolling, and other modes of active transportation. And we're keen to keep that momentum going through our active transportation plan, also known as Move, Commute, Connect. We recognize that people travel in many different ways throughout our communities, and we're keen to enable more trips to be made without a car through projects and grants that deliver safer active transportation infrastructure, and by doing a better job of ensuring that our transportation projects do a better job of supporting people in all of the different ways that they travel throughout their communities. There's a lot of work already underway on projects large and small throughout the province, from trails in rural or communities to major infrastructure projects like the Broadway Subway project and Surrey Langley SkyTrain. We will continue to take concrete steps to ensure British Columbians have the infrastructure that they need to travel conveniently, affordably, and efficiently. And Transport 2050 will provide us an important roadmap for how we do all of this together. And so with pleasure, I now like to pass the mic along to Jeff Cross, TransLink's Vice President of Planning and Policy.
Good morning. Thank you, Minister of State Ma. Thank you, Kevin, for the introductions and weaving this together for us and setting the table. Eve and I are going to give you an overview today of sort of the key themes that show up in the strategy. It's a big strategy. It's over 100 pages at this point, so we don't expect everybody to read every word, but we want to give you an overview of how it comes together, what those key goals the Minister of State Ma just pointed out, some of the key themes that come out of this, like reconciliation, equity, and resiliency, all of which we've been hearing from the public over the last couple of years, and our policymakers are so incredibly important. Before we get into the actual strategy, it's important to note that this is a strategy for the full region. TransLink is responsible for delivering that as the transportation authority, but we're the convener. So it brings together our partners, like the province, like the federal government, different agencies, all the municipalities, key stakeholders, for the collective vision of what it's going to take over the next 50 years to receive those over 1 million more people and meet all those collective objectives. Some of those are the rapid transit network maps and things like that. Some of them are very minute strategies and actions that we know are going to be incredibly important. So Eve is going to go through those, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the actual networks and then what we'd like to hear from you. So over to you, Eve.
Thank you, Jeff. So one of the key purposes of having a long-range transportation strategy is to really set out that long-term vision of where you want the region to go in the next 30 years. And so that's why setting out goals is so important. If you want to be able to achieve your goals, you have to set them out. And they also provide a bit of an anchor in times of uncertainty. So when we started the process of developing Transport 2050, we asked the public what they cared the most about when it comes to living in this region. And we turned those values, desires, and concerns into a set of 5 goals. And here's what they are. That by 2050, we all have abundant, universally accessible choices to conveniently connect to opportunities without needing to rely on a car. That those choices are reliable and get us to where we need to go to on time. That those choices are affordable, allowing us to easily move around in the region. That those choices are safe and comfortable, that make us all healthier and happier. And finally, that those transportation choices are carbon-free, supporting the global efforts to respond to the climate emergency. So to achieve these 5 goals, the draft Transport 2050 document has 126 strategies and actions to help us get there. It's important to remember that this strategy is aimed at everyone in this region. Whether or not you ride transit. It's aimed at people who walk as their primary mode. It's aimed at people who drive. It's aimed at people from all parts of our region. And we hope that in going through the document and in going through these 10 example actions, that you feel like you can connect to the document. And that's what we want to hear from you as part of our Phase 3 engagement right now. So I'm going to walk through a sampling of 10 strategies and actions. They give you a bit of a flavor of the diversity of what's in the document itself. So first, Transport 2050 has a strategy to support walkable, complete, and affordable communities where it's easy to access most of your daily needs within a kilometer of home and without having to drive. Second, transforming roads that have been primarily designed for cars into people-first streets designed for everyone, where all road users, including people with disabilities and people using transit, cycling, walking, and rolling, feel safe, comfortable, and connected. Implementing complete networks of traffic-protected bikeways within every urban center. And we'll get into that action in a little bit more detail in a next slide. Delivering frequent local transit service within a 5-minute walk of nearly all communities within the urban parts of this region. Serving more people in more parts of the region with fast and reliable transit service. That's another action we'll delve into in a bit more detail next. Another action is to prioritize the movement of transit on roads, which through more extensive provision of dedicated transit lanes, priority at intersections, and sidewalk extensions at bus stops. This will enable transit users to quickly and reliably get to where they need to go without getting stuck in traffic. It allows us to achieve our bold vision for expanding the rapid transit network primarily in dedicated lanes at street level. Expanding shared mobility options across the region so that no matter who you are or where you need to go, you'll have access to a shared e-scooter, e-bike, bike, or vehicle when you need one. Changing our vehicles and how we fuel them will support the move to zero-emission vehicles with more charging options to make it easier to use electric bikes and other micromobility devices, and as well managing the safe and equitable introduction of automated, connected, electric, and shared vehicles so that they work to support our region's goals. Using the power of new digital tools towards an efficient, reliable, and easy-to-use transportation system where everything is seamlessly integrated, everyone can easily plan and make trips that involve multiple modes, curb spaces are available when you need them, and traffic headaches are a thing of the past. And then finally, ensuring that everyone can afford to get around with a commitment to universal basic mobility where fares and fees are based on an individual's ability to pay. I'll pass it over to Jeff, who will delve into two of those actions that I've touched on.
Thank you, Eve. So one of those is our new rapid transit and fast and reliable transit network that we are proposing to the public today. This builds on the work that we did in the phase 2, where we showed several different network concepts and wanted people to opine, and we've now landed on what we believe is a network that would deliver on the objectives that we've set out for this strategy. It's notable that it's the first time in almost 30 years that we've had really a refresh to this rapid transit network. This region has been renowned worldwide for actually delivering the strategy we put forward in 1993, and as we deliver all the way out to Langley and plan to go to UBC, that would actually complete the network that we set out almost 30 years ago. So this new network of fast and reliable, where we're separated, dedicated right-of-way services, is incredibly important for shaping the growth, serving the growth within the region. It works very closely with Metro Vancouver and Transport 2050, or Metro 2050, that they are concurrently developing. It supports the official community plans that are in the works or already exist with the municipalities and the objectives that the province has laid out. It also includes not just the major transit network in the region, which includes SkyTrain, it would include light rail, bus rapid transit. It would also include the express and interregional lines. So you'll see those designated here, both express within the region, which are more limited stop, as well as interregional connections to our neighbors in the Sea to Sky corridor, as well as the Fraser Valley. When we look at this, we need to look at where people are moving throughout the region, and we know that those two regional districts increasingly are growing closer and closer to our own, and understanding what those demand patterns are is going to be absolutely essential. So as Kevin pointed out, it lays out over 300 kilometers of new rapid transit. We're going to have to do those studies in the future to see what the technology and the exact corridor will be, but it's very exciting, and it overlaps with the work that Metro Vancouver is doing on the priority corridors that they're setting out there as well. It's one of just many maps that are in the actual document. It includes, the next one I'll go into is the cycling. There's also a map on access to nature and recreation, which is very important moving forward. We're seeing that increasingly within our region, and we heard during our consultation that being able to access those wild places, those recreation spots, are essential to our quality of life, to our economy, and to our environmental objectives. So we discussed the major cycling network. We're at a real pivotal point in the electrification of all types of modes within the region. If you've been traveling around, you've seen the rapid pickup of e-bikes, and scooters. This network conceives being able to provide 850 kilometers of new separated high-quality bike multi-purpose network that could facilitate both active transport as well as electric assist. It is combined with the work that the Metro Vancouver has been doing on their regional greenways network to establish a network where you could access every town center comfortably, safely, and conveniently, as well as all of our major parks going forward. It supports all of those other strategies that Eve pointed to, making it more affordable, easier to access those short trips using lighter intensity modes, and also supports affordability going forward. So combined, these two networks will really help shape and support the growth of our communities for the next 30 years. And we look forward to working with the public and our stakeholders to hear where you're at in regards to this network and everything going forward. As Kevin pointed out at the beginning, this is a really pivotal time for us. We've been working both with the municipalities and stakeholders and our policymakers, both at the Mayor's Council and the Board, as well as the province, Metro Vancouver, and our municipalities for 2.5 years now. Understanding, have we heard you correctly, what it takes to meet those objectives and goals is really important. So we urge all members of the public to go online to transport2050.ca and really participate and tell us, have we got it right? Is there anything missing? Is there anything else you'd like to see? And with that, I think we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you very much, Jeff. That concludes the formal presentation portion of this briefing. For the reporters on the line, we will now open up the phone lines. I believe Carolyn has some brief instructions on how to unmute yourself.
For questions, please press *1 on your touch-tone phone now. Our first question comes from Derek Penner, Vancouver Sun. Your line is open.
Hi, thanks. I'm just wondering, where does this prioritize some of the rapid transit projects that have been mentioned over the course of the years? Say, rapid transit to the North Shore, or extensions up to UBC, or further in other directions.
Sorry, so I'll just note real quick, and Jeff, feel free to chime in. So, I think this first, the plan really takes a long-term view of across 30 years of a variety of projects, and I think the priorities. We're going to work with the Mayor's Council and our other elected officials on that priority, and that priority process will be laid out in the Mayor's 10-year vision in terms of what programs and projects we take on in the short term. Jeff, anything to add on that?
Yeah, it's a very good question. This really looks at what our expected growth, both in jobs and employment, and the distribution of that is by 2050. So it's sort of an end state network. Really, that next step is to look at what the maturity of all those different lines are over the next 10 to 15 years. Look at the work that's been done so far. We've done a fair bit of modeling, but understanding how these advance each one of the objectives going forward, including our 2030 climate change objectives, and that's the work that we'll undertake over the course of the next 8 months or so. Thanks.
Do you have a follow-up,
Derek, do you have a follow-up?
I do. On the notion of walkable and complete communities, you're looking at a sort of vision goal of having communities where people can walk to everything they need within a kilometer of their homes. But looking at the region right now, what's the baseline? How much of the region has that already, and how realistic is that?
It's a very good question. Quite a bit of the region has that through our regional centers and neighborhoods, but we have a long way to go. And actually, the regional growth strategy and the collective official community plans really work on focusing the next million people of growth into those areas to make that more viable. You need the densities, you need the diversity of uses around those nodes and those neighborhoods to actually warrant that intensification of both transit uses so that people can get between those, the local transit so it's convenient, the car share, the bike share, the micro-mobility to make that happen. But we're on that path. Every community in this region, all 21 of them, and our First Nation partners are working on that. So it's not a big leap. It's one that we know is happening across North America as well.
Again, to queue for questions, please press *1 on your touch-tone phone. Our next question comes from Justin McElroy from CBC. Your line is open.
Well, a lot of people are going to focus on the goal of 310 kilometers to the existing rapid transit network. I'm wondering just exactly if any budgeting has been done on this, and if all priorities for where that might go would be essentially be determined by the mayor's next 10-year strategy.
I'll just take a first shot at that and then open it up. But I think the funding piece is a lot about partnerships, and it's about working with our local municipalities, the mayor's council, the board of directors, our taxpayers, the province, the federal government. I think it's going to be a true partnership. As it relates to funding, I don't think there's any simple answer to it, but I think what we do know is that this region is growing, that it's expected to have a million more people in the next 30 years. And we've all got to work together. We know that transit is essential to moving that new million people around. And so we will be working with all those partners to tackle the funding piece.
Thank you, Justin, for the question too. We have not done that costing work yet. But one of the important pieces that we heard during the phase 2 engagement, where we put out 2 different strategies, one that was very SkyTrain intensive, one that was very surface-based with more alternatives, was there was a real split. And we came forward with really a hybrid network of that. But it also recognized the need to be very cost-effective, that there are more needs than there are dollars probably available in the next 10 to 30 years. And as such, relying more heavily on surface-based, whether that be bus rapid transit or light rail, is really an important and cost-effective way at delivering that. We still have to do the studies going forward, but we know that that tool is going to be very important for us to meet those objectives.
Yeah, Justin, thank you so
Justin,
much
do you
for
have a
your,
follow-up?
oh. Thank you so much for your question there, Justin. I agree with Kevin. It is a lot about partnerships. And certainly as the government of British Columbia, we've demonstrated ourselves to be a reliable partner at the table, especially around the topic of investments in public transit. Our government is currently implementing some of the largest investment in public transit in BC history. We've got Broadway Subway project underway. We've got Surrey Langley SkyTrain underway. We've actually got multiple projects in addition to those, of course. We've got the George Massey Crossing with the dedicated bus rapid transit lanes that we're working with TransLink on. So suffice it to say that our government is extremely keen on supporting the implementation of regional development plans. And I have to congratulate TransLink on the work that they've done so far on Transport 2050. We've been a very eager partner in the development and in supporting the development of this plan, and we will continue to be a partner once it's finalized and in our hands.
Justin, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, there is a lot in this draft plan about reconciliation, and that being one of the lenses through this goes through. There's also a decent amount in there about talking about better transportation to on-reserve communities. I guess, aside from that, what are other tangible examples of things that TransLink has been hearing or talking about already that would tangibly change transit services for Indigenous communities?
Thank you for the question. We've been consulting with or engaging with our Indigenous nations in this region over the course of the summer, and we'll continue to do that over the next while to hear what some of the concerns are. Certainly, transit to reserve is one that was identified, as well as accessing those transit stops adjacent to reserves, ensuring that there's adequate lighting and connectivity and safety. So those are some of the priorities that we've been hearing. And throughout the document, there's additional strategies and actions that are focused on some of the things that we've been hearing from those partners over the course of the summer.
One thing I would add to that too is we understand that governance is a big thing. So being involved in those studies, being involved in that decision making, how that needs to shift over time in order so that they are integrated partners into this. Our First Nations are also development partners in the region. You see that a lot happening. So how they come in at the ground floor to work with us, plan for the services and needs. Those are the kinds of conversations we point to in the document. But as you pointed out, there's a lot more work to be done there.
There are no other questions on the phone at this time.
All right, thank you all for attending. This concludes our technical briefing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thanks.